Hello and welcome in today's video on the preparation of the materials and the goods that we are going to use for the Arabic calligraphy. Now in this video we are going to talk about pens and about inks and how to make both of them. We will go into details with the pens. With regards to the inks, we will know the types and the methods of what we can do and how we can do them, but we are not going to mix any inks. First, let's start with the pens. For pens, we've got wooden types of pens that we can find out there, either in nature or buying them from a calligraphy shop. They are quite rare in some countries and in some areas, but if you kept a keen eye, you could easily get your hand on one of these. So here we've got generally bamboo pens to the right, and here we have the Jawa pen right over here. Now with regards to the bamboo pens, we have different types and different sizes. Here we have a normal bamboo tree. Let's see if it's, yeah, it is visible here. So this bamboo comes either with a really thick wall with a nice thickness to the pen itself, or sometimes it comes in a very thin wall and it could break easily. So that's another thing with choosing pens. You need heavy pens with thick walls in order to be comfortable with use when you write and when you handle the pen itself. Next we have other types like this one, which they sometimes change color into red. So it's originally white in nature, as we can see here, but sometimes they dye it in alcohol and some materials that would change the color of the pen into red, but it's not permanent, because within a few years and while using it, sometimes it loses its color. Next we have the Bulmar, which is basically a normal wooden handle fitted with a bamboo nib. Now these come in very big sizes. For example, this one, which is I think almost 6 centimeters. Yeah, it's more than 6, it's 6.3. So these Bulmar pens, they come basically for big sizes. You get them from 1 centimeter plus. This is 1 centimeter, this is 2, we've got 3 or 2.5 I think, and here's 6 centimeters. They are basically bamboo, let's say bamboo tree like this one. We would take the outer edge and we cut a certain amount of it to give us the inside of a pen, like this one for example. So this goes into the bamboo tree in this direction. Finally we've got the Hindam, which is a very nice type of wood. It's not a bamboo, it grows in I got these from Thailand, but in generally they grow in Indonesia, Thailand and in those regions. It's really nice. It has a really great ductility to it. It's not soft, it's not too soft, and it's not too hard, and you really write comfortably with it, and it's one of my favorite pens out there. We are still in the nature type of pens, and here we have the Jawa. Now the Jawa is known for its hardness. It doesn't give you any room of flexibility while writing. We will look into this and how to make it. The Jawa is basically a sort of a wooden type of a material. I think it's originally generated in Jawa Island in Indonesia, and it grows inside the top of a tree. You get very long stripes of this thing, and we cut them and we fit them on a handle. So for example, here we can see a pen that I got as a gift from a master called Affan. You fit the nib on something or on the pen itself, and you get a nib for life basically, because these are very hard types of wood. Now next we are going to look into the let's say manufactured types. We start with the dip ones, as you can see here. Generally they are either metal nibs. Sometimes you can find them made out of titanium and was it titanium? Yeah, I think it's titanium. Meanwhile these ones are like stainless steel and steel. Here we've got copper, I think. They are good, they give you good flexibility. This is not an Arabic calligraphy cut, it's an English calligraphy cut. The types are really abundant out there. You can check for them online if you want to, if you were in a country to buy them. Here we've got these dip ones that are made for English calligraphy, but we use them for Arabic calligraphy by basically sanding the tip of the pen. Let's see if it will show. Now it shows. So we basically sand the tip of the pen to make it with an angle, because in English calligraphy we use the straight cuts. Meanwhile in Arabic calligraphy we need the pen to be cut on an angle, as we can see here. Now the details of the angle and the cut we will come into later in this video. So these are the, let's say, the manufactured dip pens. You get them made out of metals basically. There's another type of pens, the cartridge and these sort of marker pens. Yeah. Now these types, they have a metal nib to them. You don't have to dip them, you basically put cartridges in them. They come in different sizes. There's a brand called Standard Graph, which comes in a very small size and is designed for Arabic calligraphy. But personally I use the Pilot pen, this pilot parallel pen. It's really nice. It comes with great sizes. For example, this one is 3.8mm, but it comes in a straight cut, so you have to cut it inclined. Yeah, I did the cut here, so it comes straight like this, so you have to sand it down to this angle in order to write Arabic calligraphy with it. You've got 4 sizes of these, and I would advise you to get them if you had the chance to. In some countries you will find normal sort of marker pens for calligraphy. Now here it's Arabic calligraphy, it's written in Arabic on it, and in some cases it writes Arabic calligraphy on it, but sometimes they come in a straight cut again, not the Arabic calligraphy cut. So you have to be careful out there when you buy these things to make sure that they are for Arabic calligraphy, not English calligraphy. Now what if we have a look on, let's have a look at how to make a pen. Let's say that you got your hand on a nice piece of bamboo. Regardless if it was bindi, if it was long, if it was short, you have found a piece of bamboo. How to make a pen out of it? First, you need to know the size for yourself. Most of the time, each calligrapher has his own sort of pen sets. They are not too heavy, not too light, they are not too long for his hand, not too short, because each one of us has a different hand size. So you get the pen or the piece of bamboo and you measure this length of it. So now you will have to cut it from here, so that when you hold it in your hand, you see now it's too long. It falls out of your hand. It's really uncomfortable. Meanwhile, if it was the size of your hand, yeah, it just sits in your hand. It doesn't fall back. It's really comfortable to write with these types of pens instead of getting a very long pen. Some people think that the longer the pen, the better. No, it's not. It's just about the balancing feature of it. So you would cut it from the mark we talked about using a saw or whatever, or just doing this to the pen. So let's have a quick example. You would just start from, for example, if you want to cut it from here, you would start to dig in and rotate, and eventually it will cut by itself. Now you've got your pen like this, and you want to make a pen out of it. You need to get a cutter and hold it this way. Be careful to put your thumb on the non-cutting edge right over here. Now there are two methods, so we are going to first start with the one that I think is safer than the other. Now here you will measure a thumb's length, just like this. Put the knife here, depending on the angle you put the knife with. So you dig in, then you go parallel, and you push with your left thumb, or if you were like left-handed, if you put the other way around, the hand that is holding the knife does not do any effort. It just controls the angle of the knife, like up and down. The other hand is the one that pushes. This way you have full control over the knife. It doesn't sort of slide off your hand. Now we did cut the first side. Mind you, this is a very sort of light bamboo. If it was hard bamboo, it will not be as easy. For example, this one, you have to basically carve it into the shape. Now you need to get a nice hard cutter, because if it was soft it might bend and just harm you. So you need to be careful with the cutter and the pen. If you were young, don't do it. Ask someone older than like an adult to do it for you, because it's not a joke. You could easily harm yourself. Now the other method that you might see people do out there is that they will hold the pen this way and they will do it like peeling a potato. Now if it was a potato it would be fine, but bamboo is hard, it's not a potato, so when you do this, for me I don't think it's safe. I mean, you could use it for later stages, like doing a let's say a sharpening of the pen, or just taking small amounts of it. But for the first cut you have to do the this way around. Now the next few steps are sort of depend on the calligrapher and who likes to write. Some people cut the back of it. I mean, you should cut the back of it, like shave it like this. Some don't, but you should cut the back of it, because the shape of the pen, if you looked at it from let's say a plan side, you see it's surrounded. So if you only cut the front side and it's flat, you've got the back side which will be curved. This will not give you a rectangular nib. It will give you a sort of a circular one with the edge. So we had a circular shape to the bamboo pen, and we've grind it down to this angle. So we've got this pen. Now if you took this tip and you sort of enlarge it, you'll find that the inner side is flat, meanwhile the outer side is circular. This is the tip, like this is the view from this side of the pen. We don't want this. We need to get a flat side on both, a flat edge on both sides. This is flat and we need it to be flat here. Therefore we have to cut the other way, the other side of it, to have this flat so that it will give us a rectangular shape. If it was curvy, like in the Kufi pen, we use a certain type of bamboo that gives us this shape, so that at the end of a letter, for example, if you were to look into old Kufi manuscripts, you will find the letter Waw look like this. Let me just zoom in. So this shape in the wall came from the shape of the pen. So when we cut a pen, we need to cut the other side of it to get a rectangular angle for us when we write, so that it won't give us any curvatures in the writing itself or in the text that we have there. Now, after we got this shape in the pen, we can now cut it with an angle. You have to be careful with cutting the pen on an angle if it was a very hard bamboo type. You need a hard surface. I usually use the cap of an inkwell or like an ink bottle. And the cutting method would be to just press on the pen until it cuts. So you need a good amount of force, you need a good knife, and you need a very hard surface beneath the pen. Now the angle you cut with, that depends on the script you are going to use. Prefabbed angles, like when you buy pens, they come either too shallow or too sharp, or sort of like, it's not always the same cut, especially when you move from country to the other. In some countries you will have people who would write Persian script a lot. The main cut there would be 30 to 35 degrees. I'm talking about this angle. So what they do basically is that they get the pen, like it's first straight cut, this is the pen, straight cut. They divide it into halves, then they divide these two halves into halves, and they take this length, they take it down, and then they cut. So they get this angle of a cut. In other countries you will get a very steep angle, from 40 to 45. Because in those countries they prefer to write thuluth or naskh or different types. This cut works for Farsi, Diwani, and Ruqa, and Kufi. Meanwhile, this one works for the majority of the other scripts. You need to be careful with these because it is different. If you use this pen to write Diwani, it won't feel comfortable, and that's why you need a huge amount of pens, by the way, because each pen each script needs a size and it needs a cut. So after you study these things and know how to get the cuts, so if you hold the pen like this, it's very easy to mark it. For a start, you can do this just to give yourself a steady idea of how to cut pens. You could just give it a mark to know which angle you need to do. But with time and cutting lots of pens, you will eventually do it without this sort of guidance. So you put the pen on the hard surface. They do sell hard surfaces out there specially made for this. You put it with an angle and you press on it until it, as you can see here, it just breaks. It gives you a nice sound to it. Now here, as you can see, we've got a small bit that will go away. Now, another thing to be careful with is the which side you should cut with. Like, should you cut it this way or this way? If you were a left-handed person, some people hold the pen like this. Some people hold the pen like this. And if you were right-handed, you would hold it like this. There's no, I've never seen someone hold the pen this way. So, for right-handed people, you need to have this side pointing towards the pen, pointing towards the paper. Let me just zoom out a bit. So you want the inner part of the pen pointing towards the paper, like this. So when you cut, it has to be this way. So I've cut it the left-handed people cut. So let's fix it to the right hand. Now you've got your cut. The pen is ready to use now. It's soft. You don't need to add the stem inside. If it was soft, you need to be careful with the stem. If you want to add, you could add just a small one at the end of it, because it does open while writing. If it was harder, you can't take your stem all the way back. As we can see here, you see where it is? It's more than the sort of half the pen. But it all depends on the this one too. It's almost, yeah, it's all the way back. Depends on the hardness of the pen. The Dolmar, you can see here, they can actually bring them all the way to this point, as we can see. Now that we saw the stem that we can add to the pen, we move on to something that is optional. The pen is ready now to write, and if you tried it, you will find that it writes fine. You just double check the you want to see if it needs some sanding, or if it gives you odd lines, to just make sure that it looks nice. Yeah, it's writing well actually. Let's just have a look here. Yeah, it is good. You check the thin side, if it gives you thin, the thinness of it, the ductility of it. Now, this is a very soft pen, so you won't rely on it for long strokes, because you can't add a stem to it and the stroke would be limited. So it gives you a stroke up to here actually. It's almost 7 centimeters, yeah, 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters. Meanwhile, when you add the stem into the pen, like these ones, they give you double the amount of ink, or even more in some cases. Also depends on the ink itself. So here we saw that the pen writes beautifully. And some calligraphers prefer to do a few more steps with the pen, and that is to get sanding paper and to first do the inside of the pen. So you get a rounded surface, you put the sanding paper on this rounded surface, and you would do this part of the pen. Now this sort of fixes the upper side, this side of the pen. Gives you a smooth gradation of the pen, because when you do it yourself with your hand, sometimes it gives you this thing. It won't be even. As you can see, this edge is extruding more than this edge. So you would use this. It takes time, but you would use this to reduce the angle here. You can also reduce it with your hand. But when you do that, you leave some nudges into the side and the front of it, this is basically the reason why they do the sanding part of this edge of the pen. So you don't have to do it, like, it gives smoothness to the pen, and by the way, the stem here needs to be longer, and yeah, the sanding paper comes in different sizes. The higher the number, the softer the paper. So for your pen making purposes, you are going to need a range of sanding paper. For wood types, for wooden pens, you need to start with 320. These numbers are written on the back. You will find P and a number next to it. As you can see here, that one was 120. I don't have the sanding paper for the time being. 320 is rough. You would use that for the sort of sanding the edges, not the tip. You don't sand the tip with this roughness. You just sand the general pen. Also, you could use the 800 for the tip if it was the Hindam. If you want to make the tip softer, though, you don't have to. Meanwhile, for steel pens, you need a gradation of sanding paper, because in steel pens we said they come straight and we need to make them with an angle. You can't cut them. Even if you cut them, you will leave the pen with a very sharp edge that will cut through paper. So you need to soften that edge. For steel, you start with 1200, going up to 2000, finally 4000. You start with 200, you sand it both sides, then you move on to 2000. Now you stop sanding, and once you feel that there are no scratchy bits on the pen itself, finally you go to 4000. 4000 gives you a very smooth metallic pen. So that's the thing with sandpaper. Some people use it, some people don't. To be honest, it's just your preference. And the same method we did the bamboo pen, we do all other pens. The Hindam, this bamboo, there are other types like Disfori and Qobrusi, basically any straight pen to do. Now, this pen, as we can see here, is not straight. If you put it on the table, you can see that it is curved upward. You can easily fix this with a lighter. So you come to the area where it's bendy, just be careful. You just apply some heat to it, not a lot, just a few, and just bend it back. As you can see, it's bending. Give it some time until it cools down. I might do this side too. You just hold it until it cools down a bit so that it won't go back. So this way the pen is better than before. You have to do a lot of work on it and just continue doing, and that's why sometimes these burns are just decorative moves and decorative shapes in the pen, but sometimes they are actually required to straighten up a pen. For example, here you've got a burn here, another one here. You could use another one down here to bend it back. So the bamboo pen should be straight once you get it. Like, it should be straight wherever you find it. You don't get a curvy bamboo pen. But if you've got one by accident, this is the way to fix it. Next we are going to see the Jawa pen. For the Jawa pen you need basically a handle to put the pen on. You could use bamboo ones. You can see here I've burnt it and I straightened it up. Then you are going to need the Jawa stick, which is very hard to find, but if you were in Indonesia or in a calligraphy shop they might have them. And you're going to need super glue. First you need to measure a good distance of the pen inside. So you need like 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter to just give it something to stick to. Then you need the length of the stem to be similar to a normal pen. Like for example, it will be 2 centimeters, like this one. If you were to measure this, you will find that it is 2 centimeters, 2 plus. If it was longer than that, you wouldn't be able to use the pen. If it was shorter, you wouldn't be able to use the pen. So now I've marked this because I know how much it would go into the pen. And here, again, you'll have to use a cutter. You have to be very careful with the Jawa because it's very hard. So we've cut this bit of the Jawa pen. You can just cut some of it, then just break it. The next step is to fit this into the fitting that we created for it. Again, you would measure the 2 centimeter, slightly longer than 2 centimeter. Look at the pen from the side. Let me just zoom it in on it. Now, you can see that it is not fixed, like you can move it around and about. You don't want the pen to be this straight, you want it to be slightly pointing downward, as you can see here. Let me just, yeah. You don't want the pen, the nib to be straight or like inclined to the other way. You need it to be inclined slightly to the writing edge. So you write down like this. You want it to be against the paper. Now, once you've got this angle, you would get some super glue or any type of glue, and you put some drops into the gap between the Jawa and the walls of the pen itself. It dries quickly enough for you to be able to start working on it. Now, usually the pen does not fit in straight away into the nib does not fit into the pen quite quickly, so you might need to shave some of this side, of these two sides. Now I fitted it on the pen in order to be able to carve it into the pen just like we did with the normal bamboo pen. Let's close this, put it aside. Give it a couple of blows. I think it's sort of, yeah, it is a bit fixed. Now to work on it, you need to be careful. You don't want to just press on the Jawa. This way you will just break it and just bend it back. So you need to be gentle with it, and you basically carve it with the same way we did with the normal bamboo one. As you can see here. Now, the best type of a Jawa would be the type that doesn't have a white part. You will have really black inside of it, just like this one. Just a second. Here it is. You see the difference between these two? You see how black this is? Mind you, it's not dyed or anything. It is how it is. You need it to be black, without any whiteness in the core of the Jawa. So you continue with this and until you reach the edge, the outer edge. For the video I won't do all of it. So when you buy Jawa pens like from calligraphy shops, sometimes they come this thick and the stem isn't long. They sometimes actually come this shape. You need to fix it when you get home by carving it until it reaches to this shape. Now here you can see how thin this edge. It's very thin, it's almost a knife shape thing. You need a long stem for it, as you can see. There's a difference between those two. You could do all of these with the sanding paper we talked about. Jawa is very hard, but you can use sandpaper in order to make it. This was just to show you how to make a Jawa pen quite quickly. You need a handle, some Jawa to fit into the handle, and you basically do it the same way. The other side here, for example, it has some white material on it that you can get rid of by just scraping it and cleaning it. It comes back black as you want it to be, and there you got a Jawa pen. Now moving on to the next thing, which would be inks. We've got a good variety of inks out there. Not all of them are good enough to be used as calligraphy inks, but you could use some of them as a start. Depending on what you want to use the ink for and how long you've been practicing calligraphy. What I could advise is to avoid any cheap types of inks, because they do harm your skill, and you could start with them if they were like the only option, but if you want to do a better job, you just better with buying a good quality ink, even if it was expensive. All types of inks are basically maximum $5. That's if it was like, I'm still speaking about dollars because everyone knows a lot of dollars. Back in Jordan, you can get this Winsor & Newton for $2.5, $2.75 up to $3.75 JDs, which is about $5 too. Schmincke is great. Here we've got the Schmincke, which is a German ink, and it's really good. It's one of the highest quality inks out there that you could buy. Basically, I've got here the brown Brazil, which is really pretty and beautiful. I love this ink. You can use it for dip pens or even spray guns. It's an acrylic based ink, so sometimes you will have sediments down here, so you could just hold it from the tip and just rotate it several times and it will mix eventually, and you will not have sediments, because all good inks have sedimentation in them if they were high quality and they want to stick depending on the manufacturer. We talked about the Winsor & Newton, which is made in France, but it's an English company. Sometimes you can get Arabian inks. If you could find those, get them, because they give you a matte texture. So manufactured inks give you glossiness to the ink. Meanwhile, the Arabian ink, which you can actually make at home, we might come into that at a later stage, you could get that one, it would be better. Sometimes you get gold and sort of silver inks out there. They are good, but you need to be careful how to use them. You need to mix them. They do settle down the ink will quite often every time you stop writing with them. You can also make golden ink back home, and to do that you are going to need three main ingredients. First, you are going to need Arabic gum Arabia, depending on the language you use. It's some Arabic in Arabic. You can get it powdered, you can get it in bottles. I believe that Wilson and Newton do make bottles of gum Arabia. If you couldn't get any of it, it's fine, you can find normal ink instead of making your own ink. After that, you are going to need something called mica powder. Now these you can find I think in makeup shops, I'm not sure though. I've got this as a gift, but you could find these in makeup shops. They are used for makeup, I guess, and you get them shiny and they are really fine particles. So you would mix gum Arabia with a mica powder with some water, and this way you will get the metallic ink. We will come to that at a later stage too. Now, there are other types of inks. There's a Japanese ink that I don't have actually, and that has a really good quality to it. What you want in an ink is the ability to flow as much as possible. Now here we've got a variety of inks. Here I have the Sheminka, the Arabian one, and the Winsor and Newton one. For the inkwell, you need thread, or you need thread. You put the thread inside the inkwell, then you pour the ink on it. You could add slight amount of water just to avoid the drying of the ink itself. If we took the Sheminka and we tried it, I am writing on a glossy paper, by the way. Here we've got a line of Sheminka. You can see that it flows really nicely. Let me just clean this quickly. The Winsor and Newton, it is nice, but for example with Winsor and Newton, no matter how few amount of ink you took, you end up with this sort of drop of ink, which is quite annoying when you are writing dots, because you have to dry it up every time you use it. But in Sheminka you don't get that. Also, you can see that at the start of the scripting is different too with both scripts. Meanwhile, the Arabian one, now with the Arabian ink that you make back home, when you make home, you need to mix it before using it because it's pigment based and sometimes it doesn't have the color. But let's see here. Yeah, you need to mix it properly because it should be dark black. Yeah, that's more like it. Now, because this is the one we make ourselves, it requires a degree of skill to work with, but by far it is the best ink you could use out there. It's smut, it doesn't shine, it doesn't glow when it dries. It's thick, it's dark, you don't see the strokes. That's one thing that calligraphers nowadays prefer, which is seeing the strokes. But back in the day, strokes were considered as faults in the sort of the scripting process. So I think we could see the shine Maybe just hold this to the side. Yep, this will be the angle we are going to see it. So, perfect. Now, as you can see here, the manufactured ones, which are the lower two, shine with the light. Meanwhile, look at the black, the dry one, the dry part, because the liquid parts do shine. You can see that the black one does not shine, and that's why it's also considered in lots of calligraphy art pieces. The paper itself has to be shiny because it's the treated paper. Meanwhile, the ink must be matte. So if we were to look at this مقهر paper, you can see how shiny it is. But when a letter comes to it, you see how beautiful it is. The shininess of the paper is sort of sucked through the darkness of the ink. And there are other qualities. For example, you can fix if you have mistakes with the Arabian ink, which might not be as easy as for the other types of inks. Now, these are the, let's say, the colored ones, acrylic based and those types. If you were to use the gold or the mica based colors, you need some things to care for. First, you can't write on the same type of paper. You have to change the paper into something that is not glossy, that is matte, and that is rough. You can't. It's very hard to write with gold on glossy paper. The second thing is that you have to mix your color before using it. So, because before mixing, as you can see, you don't have a color at all. The color is all sort of sedimented down there, and most of the time. I did use this recently, so it's not as bad as it could be. So, you would do this to it, mix it a bit, and depending on the ink you are using, if it was fluid or not, you give it a try and see how it will look like. So let's just focus this. This looks nice. So let's try it. Alhamdulillah. النسخ. Yeah, it's pretty. You need the ink to flow. For example, that's another thing with gold ink. Sometimes it doesn't give you a nice fill of the ink. So if we hold this close, yeah. As you can see here, we've got parts where we have good amount of ink, and we've got parts that barely have any ink. Now they do, all parts shine, but when you reduce the shyness of it, you can see that this doesn't have ink. Now the gum arabia in the ink, it helps controlling the ink, so even if you filled it back, it will not exceed the boundaries you've created for it. So you can't easily fill in golden ink into the boundaries you want to fill. Same thing for the dal. We can't easily fix. So it requires some degree of skill. Mind you, it's not real gold, as we said, it's just mica powder, so it is expensive though. I think a gram costs a pound, which is $1.3 or something like that. So you would get a small bottle for £2-3. Like this would cost you $3-4 by itself. You can find it on Amazon and other places. I might put some resources in the description of the video, so you could go back and check if you want to buy any of these. Now, for this video we've talked about the types of pens we've got out there and the types of things we could get out there. One last thing I have to mention that I forgot to talk about is that in Hindam you get a nice flat surface right over here on one side. So as you can see, the other sides are all circular except for this side. It is flat. Therefore you would use this side to make the 5mm pens plus, and the other side to make the 2mm, 3mm pens. If it was big, you use this side. I'll catch you in the next video, and we are going to start the calligraphy courses for the scripts out there. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and share and subscribe if you are interested in calligraphy. This has been Ammar Al-Awadi. Goodbye.